All right, I think we are live. So, welcome everyone to the Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Thanks so much for stopping by. Sorry, I'm just fixing my camera here a little bit. There we go. And so, yeah, like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I give priority answering, then who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's a link in the description. And I see we have Wheatman, Jedi, and Vishal, and Corvette, Landswath, and Kevin, and Chad, and that one other guy, and Paul, and Raphael, and Kyle, and Will. Thanks, and Luke. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. Looks like we got a great turnout here tonight. So, yeah, I appreciate all you hanging out here, and looking forward to getting into these questions here. So, first off, Wheatman says, "Good evening, Matt and fellow auto enthusiasts. Hope all is well on the last weekend of April." Yes, indeed. It's I don't know about you guys, but this has been kind of a long month for me. So I'm excited to go into May here and the warmer weather, the promise of summer and all that. But I hope you guys have been having a good month here too. And Jedi says good evening. And also he wonders if the 27 Lexus NX will receive any changes on the inside as well. It just comes down to, whether it's a new generation or not. And so I think, so I'm going to tweak this a little bit. I think that it probably, is going to be getting, so I'm just gonna get the sign in there. But no, I think it's gonna probably be getting some kind of redo. Like I think we've talked about this in the past, but it'd be either 27 or 28 is my guess. It usually does lag the RAV4 by a couple of years sometimes. So we'll see if how they decide to play it this time. But yeah. If it did get a new generation, then of course it's going to get a new interior. And my guess, if the ES is their future, then it's going to be the ES interior essentially, which means a big screen and not much else, which I don't love, but we'll see how that plays out. It is, I guess ES is also a mainstream product. So, if they felt they could pull it off in that, then I think they're going to, bank on doing that and the other stuff as well. So that'd be my guess. And I did also do already a little tour of the ES. So if you want to see what that interior is like close up, definitely check out. Just you can search for Lexus ES 2026, or is it? Yeah, I think it's 26 ES on the channel there, and you'll see it. Michelle says, Matt, something crazy happened today. I'll explain in other comments. Was scrolling Reddit and came across a post on the Jetta subreddit of someone picking up a 24 SE in gray like mine. What caught my attention is this had sport badges on the front doors like mine did. So I replied to the post saying I had one just like it and sold it to Carvana a month ago with similar mileage. And they got back to me saying they did get it from Carvana. And they also mentioned it had blue cup holder mats in it, which I forgot I added in my car. Once they mentioned that, it confirmed it was indeed the 2024 Jetta that I had. That's funny. Crazy coincidence. They also mentioned the early service records are what sold them on it and said I clearly babied it. Made me so happy to see it went to a good home. What a small world. That's awesome. And I'm so happy that you were able to kind of get that nice closure on the car and know that it's going to someone else who really enjoys it. And that's the best. That's what I loved about the bullet sale and being able to pass it on to someone that I know is going to love it, and being able to kind of get updates every once in a while on it and all that is very much appreciated. And so hopefully you can stay in touch with them too and hear how the car continues to go. And who knows, maybe in the future you might be able to buy it back off of them or something if you want, but that's awesome. I'm so glad you're able to do that. And that is a crazy coincidence too. It's like of all the Jettas out there, but that's you ended up finding it again. That's cool. And Corvette says tomorrow will be our 2-month anniversary with my dad's BMW iX, and hope he's enjoying it there. And Lancelot says good evening, and I hope all is well with everyone. My spots this week are a yellow C8 Corvette Z06 with the full Z07 package and a blue S197 Shelby GT500. Very nice spots. I don't think I really had anything too notable here. Earlier in the week I mentioned in the Wednesday live I saw 48 Pista and then F-Type R, so those were my favorites. But I haven't really seen anything too crazy this weekend, surprisingly, even though it was pretty nice weather. But I wasn't out driving around a whole lot either, so I didn't see anything too cool, but I'm glad you got to see this. It's awesome. And also Lancelot Thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships. I really appreciate the generosity, and so happy to see a bunch of looks like mostly new faces able to get those memberships here. There's still YouTube's still doling them out here. That's yeah. Thank you so much for your generosity, Lancelot, and hopefully some of them can also join in here in the live. But if not, it's all good because there was a couple. When was it like a week or so ago that were gifted? I think by Chad that actually went to people that were in the live, which is the way I wish YouTube would prioritize that. But anyway, thank you so much, Lancelot, for the generosity. And let me see here. Yeah, Kevin says hi and chat as well. And that other guy says a spot 80s Plymouth Horizon coupe with the louvers. Nice. That's funny. Man, I didn't know. Did they were you able to get them with louvers? Because the Horizon, I don't think. Yeah, I guess not like we were talking about the what was the other Plymouth that had like not the Laser, but there was another Plymouth, the Daytona. That was the Dodge Daytona back then. Anyways, other things that maybe would feel more appropriate with louvers, but that's a funny one to find. And I mean, cool to see stuff like that out running around still. That's awesome. And also, Chad, thank you so much for gifting a membership as well here. And let me see if that one's gone to anyone who's in here currently. I don't think it has, but thank you so much, Chad, for the generosity as well. And let me see here. So Chad also says I spotted an Isuzu Sidekick and a Tracker in the same parking lot. That's funny. Another kind of one of those small world things, I suppose. And the other guy says hairdressers got to stick together in this world. Maybe that's it. Let me see. Michelle also says his spot yesterday was a grandma driving an LC 500 convertible. She has really great taste. Yeah, I agree. That's wow. Yeah, I actually haven't seen anyone like really that old driving those typically, which is I guess kind of a surprise to the Lexus typical buyer demographic, but that's awesome. And very cool grandma, man. And another guy says going from sporty Indy Miata driving to sporty Mini Cooper SE driving, it's clear heavy cars don't brake hard at speed like light cars. Yeah. And also, with EVs too, you have a little bit of the regen going on. And so the way that's blended sometimes can slow down your response times a tiny bit potentially. But I hope you're enjoying the Cooper SE though. But yeah, I mean, just more mass to slow down is always gonna make things a little bit harder. Even when you have massive brakes and big cars, it's still just like a little bit more of an involved process for sure. And hope you're enjoying it though. And let me see that other guy. Okay, talking about the LC 500s again there. And yeah, he's bummed that they're not depreciating. Yeah, I mean, I think people realize the LC 500 is a special car, and so they're holding their value, and I think they should because they are special. They deserve to go for big money. But yeah, I was also same story as R35 GTR. I was hoping they'd come down to a price tag that I could maybe reach, at some point, and then they just never really did. And now it's like, yeah, do I want to pay 50 plus grand for 2009? Yeah, probably. I mean, it's still a cool car, but it can still be a little bit of a harder sell whenever you see the other stuff that's available out there these days for same money, like Audi RS5 Coupe, which is pretty much just as fast, just as practical. And a lot more luxurious, so it's tough. And let me see here. So Luke says, I'm hanging with my bud Tyler. I haven't seen in almost 4 years. That's awesome. I hope you have a great time. And yeah, it's a great way to end the weekend there. And he also said he saw a Chrysler Cirrus, a Cadillac Catera, and an early 2000s Ford F-150 with the bed completely missing, like a chassis cab almost. That's surprising. I saw something that was similarly weird where I saw kind of like a chassis cab kind of thing. And there was like the chassis cab, and then there was a gap, and then they had like a dump truck kind of thing that was like too short on like the back half, and that was there just hanging out, and then you had this gap, like so much of a gap that you could still see like the drive shaft going and everything. And it was just like this big gap right there, and then you had the thing in the back. I had never seen like an add-on to a chassis cab that wasn't hugged up against the cab there. So that was a little bit odd, not exciting or anything, but that just triggered that memory with your thing there, Luke. And Kyle says my Dodge dealer has 4 Chargers in stock and 4 to 6 in transit. They haven't sold one gas version at all. Really? Wow, that's I mean, I guess kind of surprising in one hand and then also not surprising in the other hand, just because I don't know. I thought that the styling was a home run, but there seems like there's a lot of people that also don't like the styling. I'm sure it's still just like V8 or nothing for most of those buyers, but I don't know. It's still just a shame because it's a great engine and it's a great car. It's a great Grand Tourer. And all of those inline sixes have more power than the V8s they replace. So does the EV version though, and that doesn't matter to anyone either. So it's tough because I feel bad when actual good cars don't do well, and this is a prime example of that. And I mean, you can point fingers at Dodge, and I mean, rightly so. They should have just been pessimistic about their buyer base and known that these weren't going to be open-minded people. But it's just unfortunate that a good car is going to get killed most likely because it just. I don't even know if they do come out with a V8 version, can they live off exclusively V8 sales? I think they were hoping it was going to go like Ram, and you have still some sales, and then the V8 comes and maybe juices those numbers a little bit, but still, would have some buyers that are going for the 6-cylinder. But I think the only other thing is they got to get out those cheap versions as fast as possible because I think it's still too expensive for the crowd that just wants a cool look and doesn't need all the power. Even the RT is probably too much. And, they got to do regular rear wheel drive versions. They got to do, a Hurricane 4 or Pentastar V6 in there instead. And, bring down the price another $7,500 or something, I think could hopefully, get some traction, but who knows at this point? It's just like they keep trying one thing after another and nothing seems to really improve it. So, I don't know. I'm worried about Dodge, but it's just they have their hands tied. They really, I think, genuinely have their hands tied. So we'll see how it goes for them. But thanks for the info on that because I hadn't heard much about that. I had assumed the gas version was selling better, and maybe it is in other places. I don't know, but that's definitely disappointing. And Raphael says this year is going too fast. 2 weeks until the birthday where I started thinking about retirement. Crazy. Well, congrats on getting close to reaching that milestone. And that's exciting stuff. Definitely remind us here in 2 weeks if you happen to be around, before or after your birthday there. I definitely want to wish you a happy birthday, happy early birthday here just in advance as well in case we do end up missing it. But hope you're having a good year so far here, and hope retirement is within reach if that's something you're going for. And Chad says, I watched a vid in Vegas where they destroyed a Saturn with construction equipment. No dents were left behind. I bet. Yeah, it was all just plastic panels, right? Just shattering away. Let me see. Vishal says, did you see Nissan Boss wants a Z convertible? I didn't see that. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. And it's so easy to do because 370 had one, 350 had one. So the bones are already there to accept it unless the motor's, too torquey now or something to worry about it. But I'm sure that's an easy thing to do if they can justify the business case for it, which is hard for convertibles. But if they can, I think that makes sense. So, that'd be cool to see. And also, actually, that triggers the other memory. So I did see another cool thing that I haven't seen in a while is an Infiniti G37 convertible, which I would love to see them bring that back too, because the nice thing with the G37 convertible is that it had a back seat still. And that's a key differentiator between the Z. And for someone like me who has a kid and would like to bring them along on a drive like that, that could be really cool to see them, bring that back. I know Q60 is not around anymore, but I'd love to see them, do a new Q60 and do, a convertible version. Would be kind of fun. But I'd be excited to see a Z convertible. And let me see. Tony says basketball tour. I'm not sure if that was in reference to something else earlier, but I don't know. I'm not connecting the dots there right now. So sorry about that, Tony. Um, and Man, or Martin says, "Hey, what do you think of the 2017 to 18 GMC Sierras?" Um, so that generation, it's been a long time since I've been in one. I mean, the nice thing is around that model year, that's when you did start to have the Apple CarPlay in them and Android Auto. So that's, one of the nice things about going for one of those model years is that smartphone integration that really future proofs you. And beyond that, I mean, it's a truck. I don't think there's, too many unknowns about them. I did do a 2016 Silverado High Country, and yeah, I think the oldest GMC Sierra I've done was like the 2024. So I don't think I've done any of the older ones. But if you want to hear my rough idea behind the wheel of that generation GM truck, the 2016 Silverado review is going to be probably the way to get that info. But yeah, I'm not a huge truck guy, so for me, I don't have a whole lot of fresh info on that. But they seem like they're pretty well liked, and yeah, that's the other thing is really the smartphone integration makes those probably the sweet spot from a model year standpoint. I wouldn't want to go probably too much older than that. I think GM introduced CarPlay in 16, so you can maybe go 1 year older. But other than that, yeah, I think that's kind of where I would be interested in going for something like that is around that model year. So I think you're on the right track there, and yeah, hope that helps you a little bit at least. And Chad says, I saw a Grenadier. It looks just like an old school Range Rover. I know, they certainly do. And they're cool. I don't love them as much as a lot of other people do, just because the interior is just like really weird. And it's also just like the configurations and stuff. Like there's some that look cool, but then there's some that look like really, I don't know, just like cheap, I guess. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge Grenadier fan. I'm probably a little bit biased because to me, I would just pay, because you're paying the same kind of money. I just pay the same kind of money and get a Land Rover Defender because I love the Defender. They have awesome engines, nicer interior, and honestly, I don't even know. Reliability probably maybe is a little bit better in the Range Rover, honestly, which is, not something you typically say, but with the Grenadier, like not a lot of places to service them. What happens if something breaks, that kind of thing. I commend the brave souls that are going for them, but yeah, for me, not a huge fan of them yet. We'll see if they continue to improve. I do like the idea of, a businessman just going for it and saying, I'm going to bring over something because there's nothing here that I like or whatever. And trying to, start a new car company. It's cool. But to me, it's a tough sell still, especially at the price tags they go for. And Tony says, visited PA this weekend for my son's basketball tournament. Gotcha. Saw a lowered 90s Land Cruiser. Not much else this weekend. Lots of rain. Well, I hope it was still a good time even with the rain. Thankfully, it wasn't too bad here on this side of the state at least. But I'm hoping that the basketball tournament at least went well. And a lowered Land Cruiser is kind of crazy too. And yeah, that's I'm excited to do some of those road trips in the future. I'll be doing a few road trips here this spring, and I'm excited to hit the road and get out there because I miss doing road trips. I did a bunch last spring, and then I started getting on planes more again, and now I'm going back to doing road trips again. So I got two coming up here so far. Maybe another one, we'll see. But let me see here. Antonio says, do you have any information on the Chrysler 300 replacement? No, unfortunately not. It sounds like they are looking to do something like that. And they were saying the Halcyon concept is going to probably be some of the inspiration, but that's so low slung that, it's hard to even imagine what would translate from that car. But yeah, they've said, stuff's in the works, but it's going to be a while, and it doesn't seem like they, are working very quickly either, because we were expecting, something more than just a new front end on the Pacifica here for this refresh. And, that's supposedly going to go all new, I think, here in a couple of years. I think they said their product rollout is supposed to start here. When they say, I think this year, but who knows? Because with, a new CEO now and everything, Chrysler still seems really up in the air. And it's sad because it doesn't really have to be that hard. Like I said in the past, you could do some crazy, electric thing with a Halcyon or something if you wanted, but like Chrysler 300 also just like don't reinvent the wheel. Just take the Charger, especially since there's probably plenty of spare capacity at the factory. Take the Charger, and spruce it up. Give it, new boxy retro 60s styling, and then sell the Charger as a Chrysler 300. I mean, that worked for what, decade and a half, 2 decades almost. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. Just go back to that. So I don't know, but yeah, I haven't heard anything credible, and it seems like also like the guy who's running Chrysler now is Matt McAleer, who's the same, who's is Dodge's CEO, and also he's running Alfa Romeo, and I think Fiat as well. So the guy's got a lot going on. He already had a lot going on. I mean, not like Dodge has a ton of products, but like that was his full blown mission there. Once Tim Kuniskis left, and then Tim Kuniskis came back, did Ram, but like they need someone to help out Matt, I think, with all the brands he's managing. And yeah, I would love to take over Alfa Romeo for him. That would be great. Or Chrysler, honestly. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, maybe it's just a cost thing, but like, why are they just dumping more brands on him instead of just, hiring actual people that can focus on the one brand? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I don't have any info on it. I wish I did, because I want to see it do well and see something come from Chrysler. But the one thing that they had coming soon-ish was the airflow, and then they canceled that because, again, they get scared away from EVs at the drop of a hat. So like, I don't know what's coming now, because everything that they have been working on is canceled or getting reconfigured or whatever. So it's all up in the air, I think, unfortunately. I mean, they say they're working on stuff behind the scenes, but like, you got to tease stuff, or you got to give us something more than far-fetched, concepts if you're actually wanting us to believe, and instead it's just, oh, trust us, it's coming. And, okay, well, in the meantime, you got a bunch of brands that are just completely ghost towns, it's just sad. And let me see. Also, Kyle, thank you so much for a very generous super chat. I really appreciate that. He said, Matt, what vehicle are you most excited / looking forward to? So we just covered this on Wednesday too. I'm going to try and remember all of my answers. I mean, Ioniq 6N is one of the top ones for me, because I loved Ioniq 5N so much, and in a lower slung platform sounds great. All my answers are going to be very unpopular. I'm very excited to see how Ferrari does the Luce, their first electric thing, which they have started to actually tease a lot. And it sounds, I mean, I'll admit, I'm a Ferrari fan. And so I probably, am more willing to get hyped about something, from Ferrari than most other brands. But like, I mean, they do good marketing, but like, I don't know. The Luce seems like it's the way they've gone about it seems really interesting, really promising, and really cool. So I'm excited to see more of that. And I'm excited to see more of the Aston Martin variants, because I think they're on a good path. They said in the past couple of years that they, are looking to do more manuals. And also, like, Vantage is getting to the point in its lifespan for this generation where we could probably start to expect V12 versions pretty soon, which are my favorites of the bunch from the Vantages. So I'm excited for V12 Vantage. Hopefully, I don't even know if that's coming, but I would hope it would, because it would be an easy money printer for them. Manual, anything else from them would be great. I also super excited about 911 GT3 SC that's coming here. I mean, all these are, again, very unattainable, but that's the stuff that usually gets me excited. Is the dream cars and stuff, because as far as mainstream stuff goes, there's not really a whole lot on the horizon that I can think of. I mean, we're getting a refresh for Type R and Integra Type S this year, but with the way Honda does refreshes, you're going to need a magnifying glass to even tell the difference apart from the last one. And there's nothing else on the horizon. I mean, there's no new GR things anytime soon. Maybe the GR Celica, if that ends up being something that comes here the next year or two. Otherwise, we're not getting MR2 till 2030 or whatever. The Mazda sports car stuff seems like those are all just in purgatory, waiting to go somewhere. There's a lot of exciting stuff we've seen concepts of in the past, and not a whole lot of, promise. Same thing like the WRX STI thing. Is that actually happening? Is it not? I'm a pretty firm believer in it's probably not happening. It's just so that on the mainstream side, there's not a whole lot to be excited about. The only thing, that I've been reporting on recently is the new Alpha platform cars from GM, so new gen CT5 Cadillac, and also the Buick that's going to be coming along, and also the Chevy, probably Camaro. Some people say maybe not a Camaro, whether it's 2 doors, 4 doors, I don't know. But like anything on the Alpha platform, sign me up. And then the fact that it's not just Cadillac and it's going to be returned for Chevy with something and a Buick, I'm very excited for that. So as far as reasonably priced stuff goes, those are probably the top ones. And yeah, there's not a ton else, honestly. There's other like boring stuff that I'm personally excited for. Like I'm excited for the Volvo EX60. Because which is a huge if, but if I can, improve this channel and get us to a point where we can, afford something nice after the Lyric lease is up here in about a year and 3 months or so. EX60, I'd love to have one of those for the family because it's, super safe. It looks really nice. It's pretty good with the tech and the way it's all integrated, it seems. And so, I'm excited personally to see more of that. So yeah, like I said, mostly boring, unpopular stuff. But yeah, that's probably, I think, most of the stuff that I'm excited for. Other Aston variants, other Ferrari variants of other things too are usually, exciting for me. But that's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else. And but yeah, great question. Thank you so much, Kyle, for the very generous super chat once again. And Darnell, thank you for a super chat as well. He says that's looking forward to a GR Corolla with a 2-liter, 400 horsepower. Yeah, cheers for the GR Corolla mention. I don't know. I think we may get a new Corolla this year, possibly. And if we do, it's probably going to be the same story as Camry, where it's a lot of the same stuff underneath, which means hopefully motor ports over. And I think they're going to stick with the 1.6. I don't think the 2-liter is ready for prime time yet. And I don't think it will be for a little while. It sounds like, that could be something that ends up showing up first in the MR2 in 2030. I don't know if we're going to see that motor in a production car before then. I'd like to think we would. But I'm not holding my breath for that. And that's okay, because I think the GR Corolla is magical as it is. And even just a, refreshed Corolla with the same exact powertrain sounds great to me. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that would be fun. And thank you for the super chat right now. And let me see here. So where were we? So finding my place here. I see that other guy says that Nissan should do a Z Targa and T-top instead. I agree. That would be a fun way to go about it. The thing with Targa tops that's hard, though, is they do have usually some like wind buffeting issues these days. And like that's one of the things I don't love about C8 Corvettes. If you take the top off, like it's fun, but like you do get some wind buffeting and like helicopter noises and stuff. That's kind of not ideal. But hopefully they can engineer around that. But I agree though, from a retro standpoint and how that Z looks, Targa would be the right choice. Like that'd be the proper way to do a roofless Z. I agree. And Antonio says, oh yeah, we already talked about the 300 there. And Ahmed says, hey Matt, it's me with the 2022 Mustang EcoBoost. The car I test drove in winter felt way more responsive than the one I bought. Mine doesn't pull as hard. Is it because it's the summer or is it some issue? So there's a couple things here. Yes. Part of it could be, boost weather. You're always going to feel more punch in a turbo when it's cold than when it's hot. I don't know how hot it is, though. It's only springtime, so you shouldn't feel a wild difference. Like if it was a car that like you had last driven in the wintertime, and then you hop in it in the middle of July and it's super hot, you could actually feel, I think, a bigger difference there. But because of the gradual season changes, I feel like it's kind of you're boiling the frog kind of thing, where it shouldn't jump out at you as being drastically slower just because of environmental, ambient temperatures and stuff. So the other thing, I don't know if it's like a difference in gas. I don't know how, if I'm assuming you put 93 in or 91 if you're trying to get the most performance possible, but certainly make sure you're doing that, because it's possible that maybe the car you test drove have that in it and yours maybe doesn't. Because they do absolutely pull timing for lower octane. And then the other thing I can say is that it could also be the way your transmission has learned, because those 10 speeds do absolutely learn, and it tries to adapt to the driver, and it supposedly gets better over time. But it might be that the car has decided to smooth over your shifts or something like that, that's causing it to feel a little more sluggish. I don't know. I mean, as you know, if you watched my 2024 EcoBoost review, I mean, it's super annoying. Although if you have a 22, they still have the manual around in 22, so maybe you have a manual. I can't remember. I'm assuming if it's the automatic, it could be some of that stuff that's just hurting it, because I hate that 10 speed in the Mustang. It's just not a good combo, at least with the EcoBoost. The 10 speed in the GT wasn't terrible. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, if it actually feels like significantly worse, it doesn't hurt to take it into the dealer too. Have them check over things. Maybe your air box is a little loose, or you need a new air filter, or other things like that maybe are giving you a little bit of lower performance there. And make sure obviously oil is fresh and all that stuff. But yeah. Otherwise, I don't have any other ideas. Maybe someone else here wants to chime in too. But I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But I hope it starts to feel better soon. And hope you're doing well too, Ahmed. And Michelle says, I saw a Nissan Titan driving around with no hood. The big Ultimate Energy lives on in the other models. That's funny. And Luke says Tyler has big RAV4 energy. And Antonio says Chrysler needs to show something. Yeah, I agree. So you're right there with me when I was ranting about that, Antonio. And Daniel says, I saw an RS5, a 7 Series, a first-gen Cougar, a Trackhawk, and 2 Cyber Cabs. I didn't know they were testing the real ones. It was like an actual 2-door, no steering wheel, all gold one. Interesting. Yeah, they are running around. I think, I don't know if you're near Silicon Valley, but I think it's mostly just around there, maybe San Francisco. Yeah, they are driverless, but most of them are remote controlled from my understanding right now. They're not actually driving themselves. But yeah, they are out there testing with them. Yeah, I know some people have started to spot them in the past couple of months here. And let me see. Chad says, drove behind 2 Tellurides. Who are refreshes for? So if you're talking about the Telluride refresh, so there's first gen and the refresh, and now all new second gen. If you're talking about the second gen, I mean, that clearly is trying to poach Range Rover buyers or people who wish they could afford to be Range Rover buyers, because it looks so much like that. If you're talking just in general, though, refreshes are just there to kind of keep the vehicle looking fresh. I mean, some of it goes to the typical buying cycles of for a lot of them it's a lease thing, or it's every 3 years with company cars, whatever the case is. And so that's why they kind of stick to that cadence. And especially for those lessees, you're coming out of your lease, so hey, here's a refresh version, you hop into that, and you continue to feel like you have something new, and you're not just going back into the same old thing. And I think that's kind of an important pillar of automotive product planning, is having something fresh every couple of years to get people excited and justify the purchase to the new one. Otherwise, well, if they all look the same for the past 10 years, just go buy one of the used ones. I think that's something that companies like Honda even are running into, with like Odyssey being old as dirt now. And it's like, okay, well, if you can find a nice used one, you're not missing out on much in the past 10 years, pretty much, so there's some of that, I think, is the primary driver for refreshes. And a lot of it is also, just like you got to have new styling and keep things fresh. And I think that's really the bottom line. And Doug says, hey, Matt, my coworker just bought a Dodge 4-door 6-pack. He loves it. Okay, well, someone bought one, and that's good to hear. And thanks for chiming in with that, Doug. And I'm glad that he's loving it there. I think it's a great car, as I've said in my reviews already. I will be actually living with a 6-pack here in a few more weeks. And I'm excited to, put the family in it and kind of see what it's like, for that whole thing with a four door, because I had the two door last year, but I'm looking forward to trying out the four door as well. And it's going to be actually the RT, so that'll be, a little bit less power, but still great cars. So I'm glad your coworkers enjoying it though. And Raphael says, well, I certainly like a V8 Dodge. I really like both the V6 and the EV versions. Both are cool. Yeah, I think they're going to try and have something for everyone, but it sounds like so far they're leading with the stuff for no one, aside from a few people. So we'll see how it goes for them. And Patricia, thanks so much for stopping by. She says best YouTuber ever. And her spot for the week was my neighbor's new JDM Integra. It's so sick. Nice. I'm curious what generation or what year that is, but that's so fun. I'm guessing, yeah, right-hand drive and all that. So cool. I love when people go to the trouble of bringing over JDM stuff, because it instantly, yeah, so much cooler. And that's awesome. Congrats to them. And thanks for stopping by, Patricia. And also, Chad, thanks so much for your number for 22 months now. He says, where have all the fun topless cars gone? Yeah, a lot of them have gone away. Obviously, we still have Miata and stuff. And, like Mercedes is, still kicking with the CLE Cabriolet, and there's obviously Mustang convertibles still. So there's a few, but, a lot of them, like Camaro just went away because Camaro went away. A lot of the others, that kind of a recreational car is just getting to be less appealing. People, they'll just go buy a Wrangler and take the top off of that. People just like the rugged thing, I think, more as far as recreational vehicles goes in many cases. And so it's just not a lot of market for convertibles as much as there used to be, I think, sadly. Obviously, the exotic world's totally different, and it's, very alive and well there. But anything under 100 grand, yeah, there's not a whole lot to pick from anymore. And it's a shame. And that's why, thank you so much also for another very kind super chat here. He says, Matt, if you're lost, I'm pretty sure you're in the basement. Yeah, no, I'm here. I promise it is me. And yeah, maybe two is still in the basement. I haven't heard from two in a while, but I am out of the basement, and I'm here here among everyone else. And let me see. And where were we here? So Austin says, hey, Matt, I decided to get a Porsche Cayman instead of a Corvette. Now I'm doing my research on best years to look at. Well, good luck with the search there, and I hope you find one that you really love. Yeah, Caymans, I mean, there's a lot of really good ones. I don't think there's really, any bad one. I reviewed back when Sophion from Redline Reviews had his Cayman GTS, which was the 4-cylinder back then. Even that was a really great car. I mean, I'm more prone to liking something like that because of the Super Dorks fan in me that, enjoys a boxer 4-cylinder. But those ones are pretty unpopular, I think, especially from a resale value. I mean, they seem like they're holding their value surprisingly better than I thought. I actually checked out the values on those a couple months ago. But, I would say you're probably going to want to go for a 6-cylinder. But as long as you avoid the 4-cylinder ones, all of them are pretty good. And, I've reviewed, I did the first gen, and then I did, this newest gen. Again, it's unfortunately just for the 4-cylinder. I actually have a buddy that has a Cayman GTS 4.0, and he offered it to me multiple times. And it was just always times when I was super busy and slammed. I just didn't have the chance to review it. But maybe this year will be the year that I finally review that. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of good ones to pick from. So yeah, but I hope you have a good time searching and finding the right one for you. And congrats on being in that position too. That's a great achievement on its own already. And let me see. Vishal says Stellantis will have a new strategy on prioritizing 4 brands: Jeep, Ram, Peugeot, and Fiat. Other brands would survive through badge engineering and tech platform sharing. Thoughts on that? Well, I mean, Peugeot, it'd be interesting to see them come over here because, they're not here currently. But I mean, as far as, Jeep, yeah, Jeep is going to be fine. Ram's going to be fine. I mean, Fiat, I don't know what they're doing with Fiat. And I told, the Dodge CEO when I was at the Dodge event, the Charger event, I said, I would love to see the Panda here. I'd love to see all those. There's like the Grand Panda. There's the smaller one. I don't know what they're doing, with Fiat. It's either get in or get out. And I mean, I'm happy that they stuck around long enough because I love my little 500e. And I think it's a great car. And they actually have started to shoot up in their uh, demand here. People are starting to snag them again because of the high gas prices. But I think that Dodge, is probably fairly safe just because they won't give up on it no matter how bad it crashes and burns, because it's too iconic, and it has made them too much money in the past that they're gonna keep the faith until the very end on that one, regardless of what ends up happening. But I think in America too, things are very different for Stellantis than it is elsewhere in the world. Elsewhere in the world, Fiat, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think Fiat is still, I know they're the number one seller in Italy, which I guess isn't saying a ton, but like Fiat is still massive. And I think in all of Europe, they are, I think, the top selling brand. I could be wrong. It might be someone else, but they are close to the top. I mean, they sell a ton of those pandas and everything else that they sell. So there's some potential there, and yeah, it's just very different markets. But I mean, like all those European brands, I mean, even like Lancia, does okay over there, and they have Peugeot and a bunch of these European brands, Citroen, all those that could that are still going to be really strong, and I don't think they're going to need to rebadge yet in Europe because they do have such strong sales over there. If we're talking specifically about America, I don't think Stellantis is interested in, selling out just yet with any of their brands. Even, I think as much as they love Maserati, like that's another one that's kind of being underutilized. And, it's amazing they've refused to sell that, because I think selling Maserati could actually make some sense for them. But they claim because Alpha isn't an actual luxury brand in their opinion, it's premium, that Maserati is the only luxury brand they have. And that's why they're so desperate to hang on to it. But there's just so many brands, and I don't know. It's not really easy to consolidate either, because all the brands do have a pretty unique identity for most of them. I think Lancia, you could probably get rid of a little bit easier, and Renault though, like they're quite different than Peugeot, even though they're both French. Same with Citroen, like they'll have a lot of different stuff, and so. Yeah, it's a headache. I don't know how they keep it all straight, but in America at least, it's a little more straightforward. And so I don't know. I think badge engineering and stuff can certainly be. There's a few models there where there's some opportunities to do that for sure, but a lot of the other stuff, it doesn't work. Like the horrible idea, turn the Alfa Romeo Tonale into the Dodge Hornet. I mean, Hornet was great, but it was great because Tonale was great, So there's some of those things where, sometimes it just doesn't work anyway. So you're better off just not doing it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that they definitely just need to bring out better products for all these brands, and actually bring out anything. I mean, it doesn't even have to be fantastic. Just bring out stuff. I think nostalgia is a strong seller for Mopar products, especially. So I'd say, bring back a Neon, bring back all these things. I mean, there's a lot of easy stuff to do too. I mean, like, why is there not a Chrysler version of the Jeep Wagoneer or Grand Wagoneer now, since there's no regular Wagoneer? But like, that's easy money. There hasn't been a Chrysler version of the Durango. I hope they're building that in for the next generation. But there's just so many of these easy things that, yes, it is badge engineering, and I think that's the way to do it, but like you can still have it be legitimately nicer. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy the way that they've missed a lot of those opportunities. And Michelle says, Honda canceling EVs, pulling out of South Korean market. Are they okay? I didn't hear about them pulling out of South Korea. Nothing surprises me with Honda anymore, though. So it's whatever. But it says, I guess Hyundai and Kia is strong there, so I'm not too surprised, but a lot of doom and gloom news around Honda lately. Yeah, and they're doing it themselves. Like all this stuff, they're doing it to themselves. Like if you're saying you're falling behind, catch up, work harder, like I don't know. I know it's easier said than done, but like giving up is not the solution if you're actually trying to survive. What does giving up do? Like That doesn't help them to catch up. That doesn't improve things. Yeah, it stops the bleeding, but if you're left with nothing after that, then there's no point in stopping bleeding if it's a dead, if the thing is dead, then it doesn't matter if it's bleeding out or not. So I don't know. It just, yeah, it's tough because Honda just put themselves in a terrible position, and this has been years in the making. And someone should have been, waving the flag, years ago, and someone should have been, blowing the whistles and saying, "Hey, why are we having this giant gap with RDX? Why are we, not planning this stuff out better? Why are we thinking we can sell this Afeela thing for $1 million or for $100,000?" Just, I don't know. I just it blows my mind. It just seems like there's, and we've talked about this a million times over, but all the easy low hanging fruit products they're just not doing. And yet they're like, "Oh, we can't afford to do stuff." It's like, well, you could afford to do stuff if you actually had an HRV hybrid, if you actually had an all-wheel drive Accord, if you had an ADX hybrid, if you had an Integra hybrid, like, you'd have much better numbers if you gave people what they wanted. It's just, so I don't know. I have no sympathy for Honda because, again, we're not asking for a new S2000. We're not asking for, a new supercar, a new NSX, like just pragmatic stuff, pull stuff off the parts shelf, bolt it in the freaking car and call it a day. It's just, all right. I'll move on because most of you have heard that a million times. But anyway, Darnell says he saw an F430 and a Cadillac Blackwing wagon this afternoon. So they didn't make a Blackwing wagon. So either someone custom fabricated one, or you just saw a second gen CTSV wagon, because that's the only generation that had that. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could technically say the Escalade V is a Blackwing wagon because it's a Blackwing powered gigantic wagon, SUV thing. But yeah, there was no Blackwing wagon otherwise. But the F430 is cool to see. I don't see those very often, honestly. I love the F430 still. That's a great spot. And let me see. Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says Ford should bring back an aggressively styled Taurus show EV hybrid, a Camry, Charger, and a Hyundai competitor. Yeah, I think Ford is starting to talk about maybe doing sedans again and stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen, but if they do something like a Taurus, then they will probably have a show version because they've said they don't want to have any boring cars. So Taurus would have to be sufficiently sporty or exciting in some other way. Yeah, I think that could be. I mean, Fusion was a great competitor to Camry and all that, and so I'd love to see them bring it back. But it sounds like a lot of these new products, especially the affordable ones, are going to be electrics. Based on that new universal platform that they're coming out with here. So we'll see. I doubt they'll probably tap the Taurus name. If they do end up doing a sedan, it'll probably be something different, or just go back to Fusion. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Let me see. Thank you again, Jordan, for the super chat. And Luke, thank you for a super chat. He says Honda needs to be Rick rolled. Something needs to wake him up. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever they need to do, I hope they do it fast because they're the prime one that I could easily see Honda becoming a Chinese brand that's just using a name, and that's going to be their way of catching up, is just selling out and then saying, okay, we can't beat them, so let's join them, and just throw the Honda badge on a bunch of Chinese stuff. Which I'm excited to see Chinese cars here eventually. So if that's the way it happens, then maybe that'll actually work in their favor. I don't know if they bite the bullet sooner than others who still try and hold out with their own stuff that is probably going to be obsolete. Maybe Honda has the right approach. We'll see. Maybe we'll all be, or at least I'll be eating crow here in a few years. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let me see. So, trying to find my spot here. So Austin says Honda has lost the plot. I'm looking at you, Prelude. What were they thinking? Yep, I know, and I won't go down that rabbit hole again. But yeah. And Chad says we watched Apex and they had a 4x4 van. Can we get that here? I'm not sure. Was Apex? I don't know if that's a new movie or a show or something. Sorry, I don't stay up to date on a lot of that stuff sometimes, unfortunately. But 4x4 vans, yeah, that's something you actually Chrysler teased the Pacifica. I think they call it the Grizzly concept or something like that, where it was, a Pacifica with all-terrain tires and basically doing the same thing you see with all the three-row crossovers and just doing that. But yeah, I mean, there were 4x4 vans, back in the day, and I think that's certainly a promising new niche that a lot of these van companies could just totally do that very easily, at least the ones that offer all-wheel drive. Honda might have a harder time selling that with the Odyssey, which they, again, refuse to make all-wheel drive and give people what they want. But, but the others that have the all-wheel drive, I think that could totally be something. Like there could be an X-Pro version of the Kia Carnival. Toyota could have a Sienna Woodland. They kind of dabbled with that, but it was like hardly unchanged. And it's just like, I don't know why they even bothered with that attempt a while back. Maybe they still even offer it. I don't even know, but they need to do an actual like all-terrain tire Sienna. I think that could make some sense too. And Austin says they need to bring back the Fiat 500e or 500 Abarth ICE version in the US. Yeah, I mean, that could be cool. I mean, right now there is no 500 Abarth ICE in Italy even. The Abarth is electric in Italy. So, they are doing this new hybrid, super slow little 500, gas thing. But it's I think like 79 horsepower. It's going to offer a manual just because a lot of Italians, especially, really still want the manual. They advertise it heavily in their other Fiats. And so, they're doing that. But I think, I don't know, but, based on how they had to like retrofit this engine in to the new 500, I don't know if all the Abarth stuff fits anymore. I mean, the car has gotten slightly bigger than the last generation, but I think it was just the packaging and the way everything's set up. It was just never designed to accommodate a transmission and all that stuff. I mean, they've now done the work with that, regular version. So maybe the path is paved now for a new gas Abarth. I don't know, but would that actually help in the US? I don't think it would. Like, I mean, I would love to see it, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't think Abarth actually ever sold very well here. I mean, it'd certainly be better than the 500e, but I mean, like when I was talking to the Dodge CEO, I was like, all these things that sell in huge numbers in Italy, bring those over here. I think the problem is a tariff, is the tariff things are still just in these kinds of cars that are low cost. You have such low margins and tiny little profit margins that, you attack on an extra 15%. I mean, that's partially what killed the Dodge Hornet, I think, and it's just, you can bundle that premium into the Alfa Romeo because it's, Alpha. So you can kind of justify that a little bit more. But like, I think with Fiat, the Dodge CEO did, try and, bring over the Grand Panda and, I think the other one's called like the Pandita or something, because they don't have a regular Panda anymore. I don't think it's either like Grand Panda or Pandita, unless I'm missing something. But regardless, like, they have all these things and they sell, again, tons of them in Europe. And so, like, people want affordable cars. And I'm like, it can't do any worse than the 500X. And there is like the Fiat 600 even that they have over there, which is like a four-door 500 essentially, and is just like the 500X that we had, previously. I don't know why they didn't keep that going. Like, they had these new generations that came out when you were expecting them. And instead, 2023 was the last year we got the 500X, and they just let it linger and just gave up, but not gave up enough to close the stores. And instead, sent over the 500E for, kicks. And it just seems really weird. But, they have a lot of stuff they can bring over that I think actually would help the brand and help dealers, but yeah, I guess it's just the tariffs. They can't justify it, I'm guessing, and because I think if it wasn't for tariffs, like, they'd actually have a decent shot. Like, I think a Fiat Grand Panda probably would be a good competitor to like a Toyota Corolla Cross, a Honda HR-V, especially for people who don't, who want something with a little more personality because they look kind of retro now with the Fiat and stuff. I think it could be a fun choice. Yeah, it probably wouldn't outsell the HR-V, but like, it would just, I think, sell in respectable numbers. But, who knows? They have all the data that I don't. So I'm guessing they have good reasons for why they do what they do. But on the outside here, it's just like, these are popular models elsewhere in the world. they could be popular here too with the right, price and the right branding possibly. But anyway, Jedi says, will you be reviewing the Lexus ES Hybrid? I will be doing the ES eventually. I did get invited to the media drive that is happening here in the future. I turned it down just because scheduling wise, it didn't work out for me, unfortunately. But I'm hoping to get one as a press vehicle sometime this summer or fall. They're being kind of slow with some of the press cars they're sending me recently here. So we'll see. That one might take a while, but hopefully I will eventually do those. I think the focus probably initially is going to be on the electric versions. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't even remember which ones are going to be on the media drive, but regardless, yeah, I want to get into it eventually because obviously Camry's a super hot seller. ES with the hybrid, I think will be a pretty good seller too. And so I'm excited to try it out, here hopefully later this year. And Austin says, I doubt EV Ferraris will do well, to be honest, unless they can find a way to give it a soul. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they play it. I think, the initial stuff was it's going to have a microphone on the actual electric motors and pipe in live sound from that motor, and they're going to really play into the electric component instead of pretending and having a cosplay as a gas car. So that could be interesting. As far as will it do well, the way Ferrari plays allocation games, it's going to be the same as a lot of the stuff that's undesirable. It's going to be like, okay, well, you order this one so you can get the next V12 thing, or so you can get the next limited edition thing that you can flip for double the money in, a couple of years or whatever. That's usually the game they play. Like, I don't think a lot of these people even want the 296, even though I love the 296. I drove it on Pista di Fiorano in Maranello, and like 296 is amazing. But like, a lot of these people, they just want a huge engine, and they don't want to go down to a 6-cylinder. But I think even like, there was a lot of pushback on the Ferrari F80, but then people are still taking a ton of deliveries of Ferrari F80, this hypercar with a 6-cylinder hybridized engine. And I think they're taking those deliveries because they, again, want to stay in Ferrari's good graces. And to people like that, it doesn't matter if they, piss away $3 million or whatever, because, it's just about staying, again, in Ferrari's good graces for the next one or whatever. So I think if they, have it like that, like, oh, well, you want to get the next special per Songway, or you want to get this or that or the other, like, order a Luce. I think there's going to be some of that goes on for sure. But also, like, I mean, I know most of the exotic market does want gas. That's been pretty clear. But like Rolls-Royce Spectre has sold really well, especially in other parts of the world, which is the other thing. Again, looking at this from an American mindset, yes, this might be hard, but like, elsewhere in the world, like, people are still buying a lot of these electric things and loving them. And it's, very popular. I mean, even like Germany, for example, had a banner year in 2025 with their EV sales after having a slowdown in 2024. And 2026 is looking really promising for a lot of Europe as far as just like really, strong EV demand again. So, I think it's going to make a lot of sense, for a lot of the European, buyers, which is what Ferrari primarily caters to. I mean, we are a huge market here, especially California and Florida. But I think that it's going to sell okay just because of the way they structure the company and orders and all that. But we'll see. I think Ferrari is just one of those companies where, because they've protected themselves so well with their high demand for the other products, I don't know if a modern Ferrari can actually flop, because I think you're always going to have, be pretty sold out, because again, people just want to be on that list. And let me see. Also, Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat again. He says, EV/hybrid and internal combustion engine, is hydrogen tech dead in the US? Are there other forms of vehicle propulsion being experimented on, USA or otherwise? I don't think there really is. I mean, there's a lot of, the Koreans and the Japanese are still just really into hydrogen. And I mean, BMW is as well. They're all still putting out these hydrogen cars that, a dozen people drive or whatever, and that's it. But like, it's, that's, I mean, but there was a new patent, I think this past week, Mazda patented a hydrogen six-stroke engine or something. And there's, yeah, I mean, engineers always are toying with fun ideas behind the scenes and stuff. So, that's, but I mean, like the other hydrogen thing too, like Porsche was experimenting with injecting hydrogen into the combustion chamber of 911s or something like that, just to quickly heat up the catalytic converter because it gets really hot when you burn hydrogen. So like injecting a little bit to heat up the catalytic converters faster, so you have less emission issues early on in a cold start kind of situation. So there'll be little things like that, but like, yeah, other than that, I mean, I don't think there's any other forms of propulsion being worked on. And I think that's, yeah, it's just kind of those are the main ones. And I think, the primary thing too is that I think there's no reason to look beyond electric. I mean, yeah, hydrogen has some other potential benefits, but there's no infrastructure. There's no hydrogen infrastructure. And so, why you would pursue that and start from ground zero again instead of, it's like you're going back to 2010 again and saying, okay, well, let's restart over. And you still see all the people that are pushing back on EVs, and hydrogen still has a lot of its other issues, and it's just problematic in so many ways too, that you still have to transport the fuel versus just direct to grid stuff with EVs. There's just, and because it'd be one thing if EV tech wasn't evolving. If EVs were the same as they've been in the past 10 years and there's no progress whatsoever and the batteries still took forever to charge and all this stuff, like, okay, you could see that. But like, all you gotta do is look over at what China has available right now because they're living in the 2030s. There's already, like, they're getting to 5-minute recharge times with some of this brand new stuff that BYD is putting out and stuff. These 1 megawatt chargers, and even just battery swapping things that NIO does over there. I mean, there's so many great innovations that there is no slowdown. There is no issue as far as recharging. And the batteries are also getting so much more range because the motors are getting more efficient. The battery chemistry is getting better, that you don't have any range issues, in a lot of these newest EVs. We're seeing this evolution here even at home with BMW. The last generation, like i4 could do, about 300 miles of range or so. And now we get this new i3 and we get the iX3, over 400 miles of range in those. The Lucids will do over 500 miles of range if you equip them properly. And these are cars that, again, because of those giant batteries, you don't need to have the whole thing recharge in 5 minutes flat anyway, because if you do 500 miles in a Lucid and you only want to stop for 5 minutes after 500 miles of driving, you're not being realistic. Unless you're doing a cannonball run, like, no, like, you're getting out, you're going to the bathroom, you have to eat something. I mean, there's just, it gets to a point, I think we've gotten to that point in some of the best stuff already. Like, realistically, there is no issue, especially if you're a planner. But even if you're not a planner, in a Lucid, you can fly by the seat of your pants, and again, you got 500 miles of range, and it's going to be a while before you run into that. And realistically, you stay at a hotel that has a charger, you drive 500 miles in a day, which, for the average person is probably, about the point where you start to probably, decline from a sharpness standpoint and stuff. Anyway, you should probably stop driving for the day, around that point. Obviously some of us can handle more than that, but like the average, subpar driver, I think that's probably time for them to call it quits and, head to the hotel and charge it up. And then the next morning you got another 500 miles. So I think that, yeah, if there wasn't that, fast innovation, then it's like, oh yeah, let's look for the next thing, and then what's the next greatest thing. But I just think that EV is it, and it's going to be it for a while. Beyond that, yeah, who knows, what will happen. I think hydrogen has promise way off in the future, but it's just, again, the infrastructure is the big issue, I think, honestly. Let me see. So where were we here? So hello, Kyle says the INX 6N's rims look so good. Yeah, the whole car, in my opinion, looks really sweet. I'm excited to get behind one of the wheel of one of those here. I think hopefully this year we'll see. And Jedi says I get a lot of customers asking me if the Golf R will come with an Audi 5-cylinder. We're all waiting for confirmation. Well, I mean, unless things get changed, I actually did a rant about this a couple of weeks ago. Um, that motor's pretty much done. They're saying they're trying to find a way to keep it around for the new generation, but that new generation version would almost certainly be hybridized. So the talk now is, okay, maybe we keep the 5-cylinder around, but it gets the same plug-in hybrid system we have in the RS5 that's coming, which, and that is hooked up to the V6. So it's like, okay, we drop a cylinder, we keep that legendary motor alive, but we have it with a plug-in hybrid. But can they stuff all that stuff into a tiny little A3? I mean, I'm guessing, again, they can downsize some of the components maybe, and you have a smaller battery than what you have in the A5. But like, that's if it survives, it's going to survive that way. And they've already said that it's so the other problem with putting that motor in the Golf is the motor. I think they have now said, they initially said it wasn't going to last much longer than, like, I think the end of this year was going to be the end of production for it. I think they've now said that that's the end of production for Europe, but for America and a couple other markets, like maybe the Middle East and stuff, it's going to be a little bit longer. I think they said mid 2027 is when that motor will end production instead. So basically, that's their deadline. They're trying to find a way to keep it around beyond that. But again, it would have to be a hybridized version because this is a global car. It's focused primarily in Europe. They need to make it compatible with European driving and the requirements that they're going to be having emissions wise and everything. So that's the way it would stay alive. But none of that stuff allows for a Golf, in my opinion. Not even close. I know it's been a very popular rumor. And I've always shot it down because I've always said that is not, there's no way that's going to happen. I wish it would be a cool idea. If you really want that, you can do a swap. I know Humble Mechanic already has done that. And I'm sure there's others that have as well. You can do it if you really want it. But there's no, because here's the thing, like, even if they do manage to keep that motor around, okay, so they keep the motor around, it's in a plug-in hybrid, variant here in 2028 or something like that. Like, great, sounds good. But like, that for one, that would be extremely expensive. And again, we're talking about a Golf, and you have, what is it, like 50, 52 for a Golf R, something like that. And then RS3 is like 63, I think it starts at, something like that, maybe 65 now. But a 15 grand spread sounds significant, but like, you get to a point where you start stepping on the Audi's toes. And I think Audi knows that motor is very special to them. I think there would be actual fist fights in the corporate offices of Volkswagen and Audi if Volkswagen actually tried to take that engine from them. I don't know where that rumor came from, but like, if you put that motor in there, easy another 5 to 10 grand. And then here's the thing. Okay, say they happen to make it. It's going to be limited production. It's not going to be a mass produced regular thing. So, okay, let's be really optimistic here and say it's going to be 55 grand. Every Volkswagen dealer is going to want to charge 60. Okay, and then at 60, and probably even more, but even at 60, okay, I'm just going to go pick up an RS3 for another 3 or 5 grand. I mean, I get that some people really want the hatch thing, I suppose, but like, it's just like, to me, there's no way I can justify it from a business standpoint where it makes sense. Like, marketing sucks from that vantage point. Pricing is going to suck, and it's just going to cannibalize, itself, just because it's going to be too expensive if it did happen. And then again, because of the production pipeline and stuff, it's just, not to be like a total Debbie Downer here, but like, I don't know. I mean, everyone sees it differently, but I don't even understand how that's a plausible idea personally. Like, it fits. That's the only thing that's plausible about it. But like, I wish it was a realistic, dream, but to me, there's no way. And I'd love to be proven wrong, but if someone wants an RS3, just go get an RS3. You can get a used one for 50 grand, get a used one. have a nice day and enjoy your 5-cylinder. Like that's the way to do it. If you have 50 grand to spend on a Golf R, or you are open to, a more expensive Golf R that's 55, that'll get you a nice RS3. Just get that on the used market and move on, instead of pining for something that's never going to happen. Is what the recommendation I would give your customers. If you're a Volkswagen salesman, it doesn't help you, I apologize. But yeah, it's just, sorry to be annoying, but just that keeps coming up. That rumor keeps popping up, and like I don't. It's just, I guess, because it's a popular one, and they know people are going to latch on to it. But it's just, there's no way, in my opinion. And let me see. Michelle says, speaking of GR Corolla, when's Corolla due for a redesign? I mean, the redesign, I'm pretty sure it was already leaked. At least the Chinese redesign has already leaked. If you search 2027 Corolla China leak or something, you'll see it. And it's got the same kind of like Prius lights in the front and stuff. So, and that, same kind of roof line, which is the same thing with Camry, same roof line and all that. So I'm thinking that's probably it. But then we also saw that Corolla concept, which I don't know if that's for like the next generation or something, but like that kind of sent us a mixed signal of like, okay, well, is it going to look kind of like that concept, or is it just going to be this kind of phoned in, kind of conservative redo? And I'm inclined to think it's going to be a conservative redo because, they did that with Camry, and it's paid off very well for them, and I think it will for Corolla as well. And David says, is 0W20 oil too thin? It depends on the application. I know there's a lot of public sentiment that just, that's a crazy thin oil and that it shouldn't, you shouldn't be using that. But this is where I kind of put my faith in the much smarter than myself engineers that, have set this stuff up. And yes, I understand, they have to engineer to a price point. They have to engineer to emissions standards. And, there are compromises that get made. No engineer can make the dream car they want to make unless they're working for, Gordon Murray or something like that. But otherwise, like there's just, you have to make compromises. And so, I think that's kind of the thing. I mean, that's the nice thing with oil, though, is you buy a car, especially if it's beyond its powertrain warranty, put whatever oil you want in there. If it makes you feel, happier or better with, the long-term potential of a different oil that's a little bit thicker, you can usually play around with oil a little bit and not change things a whole lot. So if that, really worries you, you can always go up to something a little bit thicker. But Luke says also he's not a fan of the thin oil. It comes from the same engineers that do 10,000 mile oil changes. Yeah, which though, I mean, oil has improved. I will say, like, we're not dealing with the same oil as our grandfathers. That's another area where we have had advancements. And, everyone's experience is different, but like when I look at like some of these medical couriers, for example, that, do 200,000 miles on a car in 3 years or 2 years or whatever the case is, they do those 10,000 mile oil changes and they're still kicking, after 200, 300,000 miles or more. That seems to be okay. Now that's kind of a different use case because it's just probably purely highway or just like always running, very little warm up time, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, probably not an apples to apples kind of comparison there, but like I have seen a lot of cars that, do the 10,000 mile oil changes and they're fine, for several 100,000 miles. So it doesn't have to mean it's automatically bad. And if a car is engineered for that and the oil is engineered for that, I think it's possible you can do that and not get burned. Does it hurt to change your oil sooner? No, so that's another thing. If you want to do it more frequently, by all means, go for it. And could help you. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But either way, again, if it helps you to feel more confident in your car, then it's probably worth it. But yeah, I think that all has kind of evolved for sure. And the engines are adapted to, like the cylinders and a lot of these things have, coatings on them, which certainly helps as well. There's other factors at play too. So that it's not all just about the oil all the time either. But every car is kind of different with that. And some companies do execute those things better than others for sure as well. David also says his 2024 Camry, 18,000 miles, worried oil is too thin and warranty issue. There'll be an issue if you change it. And so, I mean, I would, yeah, if you are within the warranty period, my recommendation would be stay to their recommendations, because if something goes wrong, yeah, it's on them anyway. So, I would do things personally, I do things by the book until I'm out of warranty. And then once you're out of warranty, you can, play around. And then that's also, by the time you're getting those higher mileages, they can, buy one of those higher mileage oil formulations that a lot of these companies offer. And then, that's the opportunity to go up a little, something a little bit thicker. Cause a lot of times, like, oil leaks often happen later in a car's life as well, once things are, a little bit more loose, or, not quite as tight. And like, so that's kind of the prime time. During the early years, you probably don't need to worry as much. So I'd say those later years, go to a thicker oil if it makes you feel better. Go to one of those high mileage oils, and then, you've hopefully are fine. Even if you ran thin oil for the first 60,000 or whatever, it'll help you, eke out the most amount of miles down the road possibly. And David also says that the Charger got civilized. Yeah, there's probably some of that too. Maybe it's just not as raunchy as some people were hoping for. I don't know. And let me see. Raphael also says he doesn't trust the 10,000 mile change, so he does it as his every 5,000. And David agrees, yeah, 5,000 max. And yeah, some people say 2,500. I see David says, yeah, it's all over the place. I know for me, for the Mustangs, I would stick to, I mean, it depended, but typically around 3,500 miles, I think, is around when I usually would change them. I think sometimes I did go a little longer. I think the owner's manual for the Mustang, I think, called for 5,000. I think I said 3,500 again out of an overabundance of caution. But I can't even remember now because it's been a while. So yeah, and with the Bullet, it was driven so infrequently. I just did it every year because I was never at 3,500 or even 5,000 miles in a year. So the Bullet, it was always just once a year. So I'm talking like pre 2020 when I did more frequent oil changes, but I don't even remember at this point. Lance Ross says he remembers when it was 3 months or 3,000 miles. Yeah. And Patricia says it's a 97. The JDM imports seem to be really popular here in Austin. Lots of them and K cars. Nice. That's awesome. And yeah, I actually have family in Austin, but I haven't really spotted too many cool JDM things when I was there last time. But last time was, when was that, 2024? So yeah, hopefully head back there sometime relatively soon enough to keep my eye out for some more JDM stuff next time I go. So it's cool to hear that there's a good community of them there in Austin. That's awesome. And see, EPA LOL is saying hi. And let me see. Chad says, since you have been to Florida, what's your favorite attraction? Well, I haven't done all the fun Florida stuff. I really want to go to Universal still. I've never been to Universal. And I don't know. I'm a huge space nerd too. So, well, not that big of one, but I really love space, especially as a kid. Kennedy Space Center was really cool to go to. But Disney is great, especially now, having a kid. We were at Disney back in 2024, and I think that's probably most people's favorite Florida attraction, or maybe at least a lot of people. But yeah, I'd have to say Disney probably. I'm not a huge like Disney obsessed person or anything, but like, it's been a fun time whenever we've went for sure, and it's a special place for us because we actually got married at Disney back in 2015. So yeah, for that reason alone too, I gotta say Disney is the place. And let me see. EPA LOL says he made a video on something. I'm sorry, I'm missing what you're referring to there, but let me see. Darnell says the best Hondas right now, in his opinion, are the Civic Hybrid, Passport, Civic Type R, and Pilot. Yeah, those are some of the good ones. I think Passport is doing very well, actually. I think that is one of the few bright spots right now where they played that very well. They gave it enough of the Forerunner thing, but they made it softer and more roomy than Forerunner. So I think Passport has a really nice niche carved out for itself that a lot of others can't really compete with super well. And so, yeah, that might be one of their saving graces here this year. But otherwise, Civic Type R is awesome. But yeah, just again, I'd like to see what they do with this refresh. I'm hoping it's something a little bit more exciting. But Civic's great. I just, I think I wish there was a little bit more exhaust sound. They fixed a lot of that stuff with Integra. I think I definitely would go Integra Type S. That's the one that gets me more excited for sure. But Civic Type R is great. And Civic Hybrid and Pilot are all, yeah, good too. And Lancelot says, dude, you just wrecked your Ferrari. And he says, it's not mine. Fiat is fix it again, Tony. Digifex says, yeah, well, thankfully my Fiat, knock on wood, has been flawless. It's kind of funny. The build quality on that is even better than the Cadillac that we have. So thankfully I've been pleasantly surprised with the Fiat. I'm very happy to report that. And also, sorry, I missed the other stuff. Jorge, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. And I'm not paying 42 grand for a Prelude. Thanks for stopping by. And thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships as well. I really appreciate the generosity there too. And hope you're doing well. And thanks for still keeping the fun username there, okayest bassist, as they formerly went by. Let me see. Michelle says, someone on Reddit made a Mazda 6 concept with it being on a rear-wheel drive platform. Never have I wanted a concept to be real so bad. If they made one, literally shut up and take my money. Yeah, the thing is, it's right there. All the pieces for brilliance are right there. You take the CX-90, and you plop a sedan body on it. Like, that's all you got to do. I mean, that'd be a big car. So, maybe chopping the platform a little bit, making a little bit of a shorter wheelbase would help. But like, the motor's there. And I mean, I'm like, yeah, they sell a decent amount of CX-90s and CX-70s, but like, I thought for sure, I'm like, okay, they invested all this money in making this big, expensive motor. Like, they're going to have to put this thing in everything to like amortize the costs and, pay it off. And instead, it's been crickets. It's like, oh, we just made an entirely brilliant, expensive new engine and transmission and platform for essentially one car, because the CX-70 is the same thing, for one car. That just, I don't know who is running the accounting at Mazda, but I sure hope they're keeping their head above water here with all this spending, because it just seems like wild that we haven't seen everything powered by that platform yet. Obviously, again, they have their own thing with the SUVs, but like, this is prime time to do a Mazda 6 sedan, because they've got all the pieces. I don't know if it would sell super well, but like, again, surely all the heavy lifting has been done already. So like, it's probably not that big of a gamble, so I don't know. But yeah, that'd be awesome. And I mean, yeah, just based on how good CX-90 drives, that and a sedan platform, I agree. Sign me up. Because I mean, it's still like, to this day, if I needed a 3-row crossover or even a large 2-row, CX-70, CX-90, like instant choice. Like, don't have to think about it. Don't have to cross shop. Like, that's it. Just because they drive so much better than everything else. It's just, there's just no competition in my mind. Like, easy choice. If you're shopping in that segment, that still is absolutely my first pick without flinching. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I love that thing. And Chad says the Hornet could be a whole video for the questionable choices. Yeah, but that's another one. I mean, I reviewed it when it was new, and I remember talking to him about it and stuff. Like, to me, the logic for Hornet was pretty solid. I didn't like that they stole it from Alpha, because that seemed kind of crappy for Alpha. But like, the premise was, fastest thing in its segment, most power in its segment, Brembo brakes, all this stuff. And I think that maybe was just led too much by the enthusiasts. It should have been blander. It should have been more, it should have just not been the Tonale. It should have been something else. But like, I think they just thought that people would pay 50 grand for a subcompact crossover with Brembo brakes and a bunch of power. And it's like, nah, it's not the way it works. Like, there's a few people, but not a lot, and it's just, yeah. It's another example of a car company needing to be more cynical and just being like, this is a great idea on the surface, and for all of us enthusiasts, maybe we can get behind it. But even most enthusiasts can't get behind it. But like, on paper, it sounded good, and then it's just that, they just made it too expensive, I think it was the bottom line, and all that stuff. It's kind of a Prelude problem. I think Hornet was like the same exact problem as Prelude. You put big fancy brakes on something that no one's going to appreciate big fancy brakes on. You put a bunch of, I guess the Prelude is not the same way, but you have this great platform, you have all this fancy stuff, and then in the Dodge's case, you have a bunch of power, and then you think people are going to line up and pay big money for it. It's like, no, it's the same thing with Prelude. Prelude should not have the huge brakes from Civic Type R. It should not have the Civic Type R front suspension. Shouldn't even really have the adaptive dampers. I mean, I guess you could put them on, and that's the least offensive thing on that car from a choice standpoint. But like, all these expensive things are what drove up the cost, and also tariffs drove up the cost. They said, I think I remember seeing, not officially, but the speculation was that Prelude was supposed to be 37 grand until tariffs came in, and then they were like, okay, well, now we got to bump it to 42. So, I think, but I think it's just like they screwed up the packaging. It's just another one of those examples with the Hornet. Let me see. Lucas says, what do you think of the 26 Compass Limited? So I guess maybe I didn't get to your question soon enough last time, Luke, before you had to head out. But so I talked about this last time. I don't know anything about Compass because I haven't driven it ever. So it's very old at this point. New generation is coming. If you search, you can already see what the 2027 Compass looks like. It's already in Europe. I think it's going to come here mostly the same. It's just taken a while. It's going to be built at the Belvedere plant. It's been idle for a while. So the Compass is coming. In the meantime, the old one, it's dated. I think there's better options in that segment. And if the price is right, it might make sense. But if it is not significantly under the price of basically every single thing it competes with by a good margin, I'd go buy a competitor personally. I think it's basically everyone else probably has, just because like Compass is so old, like it's not very safe, probably from a platform standpoint, because it's just dated engineering. It's not gonna have as much space. And it's just kind of pricey. I think Compass still, it's like, what does it start at, 31? I mean, again, I'm sure people are getting gigantic discounts on them, but like, I'd have to just look at the deal and then look at the deals you can get on everything else that's comparable. And then if the gap is huge, maybe go for Compass, but I don't consider it to be a top contender in that segment. Kyle says, hey, Matt, every time I take my car in for routine service, something bad happens, like they forgot to fill with oil, scratched, drove it into the lift, etc. Different dealerships, going to do it myself now. I don't blame you. If I had that bad of luck with that stuff, I would totally do it myself too. I mean, I was always paranoid about that stuff as well. Like, especially so in the last few years of the Mustang ownership, I had my buddy who was a mechanic. He was able to do the oil changes, and I was able to stand under the car and, watch him do everything. But, there's nothing, it's one of those things. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And a lot of people just can't do that themselves. So they have to place their faith in mechanics. But especially just because so many of these dealers have been bought out by these giant, private equity things and these conglomerates and stuff. It always just degrades the quality of everything. The people don't get treated as well. So I would say, I mean, I'm not sure, what kind of car you have or how specialized the maintenances have to be, but as far as basic oil changes, my recommendation these days is try and find a local like mom and pop kind of shop place, or like a specialized repair place that actually treats their employees well, who doesn't rush a job, that's not sleazy. If you can find a well rated independent shop, I think independent shops are the way to go, especially if your car isn't under warranty. If it's under warranty, you probably should take it to the dealer and make sure everything's documented just for warranty's sake. And that goes also, if you do your own oil changes and stuff, make sure you keep the receipts. That's very important, so that if you have an issue with the engine, you can show them, here's my receipts, here's my note. You should keep a log when you change your oil. It doesn't hurt to take a picture each time, to really prove it if you want. But as long as you have the receipts for the oil you bought and a log, that should hopefully be fine for the warranty component. But I think if you want to I mean, there's just some really good shops that I think do a good job, but they're not going to be the regular run of the mill dealers typically. I mean, there's some dealers that do a good job, but it's few and far between. I think I agree. And I see Digifex also saying the same thing I said there about the RS3 motor. And Jordan says, could Lucid Motors and tech be incorporated in the actual grid, power companies, etc.? Although Nikola Tesla was on the verge of free energy before JP Morgan axed his plans because they would be billed. Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting stuff with Nikola Tesla. I agree. I kind of went down that rabbit hole a long time ago and kind of did some research on him and all that. And there's interesting stuff. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have been hearing about all these scientists that were apparently working on anti-gravity. That I think there's over a dozen now that have had mysterious axings. And so I don't know. It's kind of interesting with all that stuff. As far as the Lucid motors and the tech in the actual grid, I mean, you don't really need motors in the grid, I don't think, for anything. So, the real promise would be, Lucid using those motors in other cars and licensing that tech, which is what they're doing with Aston Martin. Aston Martin was going to be using Lucid components for an Aston EV. That seems like it was put on the back burner. I think they're saying 2029 now, maybe for that. But I think that's the best path forward for Lucid if they are unable to get their own company off the ground to the point where it's stable and well-funded and all that, which, I mean, they're keeping it alive. So I do have faith in Lucid, but in a worst case scenario, I think that their motor tech is best in the world right now, I think. And so certainly that shouldn't go to waste. And I'm sure someone would scoop it up, because it's good stuff. And Michelle says, agree, there's no way Audi will let Volkswagen have a 5-cylinder. Yeah, and I see you agree about not knowing where that rumor got started. Yeah. And Luke says, yeah, better safe than sorry. I do the 5K oil changes. Yeah, and certainly, like I said, there's no oil interval that is too short, honestly. I think you're fine to do it as frequently as it feels good to do. And Lance Wall says they didn't consult the Duke boys about the new Charger. Yeah, I guess not. They should have seen if they could go off some jumps in the middle of nowhere with it instead. Jazz says, I don't know if you'll do me a favor. However, you have a child, you have a daughter, please not a kid. Yeah, I don't know. I like using the terms interchangeably. I don't know. I mean, I do have a kid. In my opinion, it's just kind of fun to, say it as that. Daughter seems a little formal sometimes. I don't know why. But anyway, Lance One says, when I was at Disney World, Typhoon Lagoon was still being built. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't know if that's still a thing. Beth would know if that's still there or not. I don't recall that being there when I was there, though. And Jeremy says, thanks for the membership. That was one of the ones that OK Spaces gifted. I'm so glad that someone that's finally in a live stream gets a membership. So welcome, Jeremy, and thanks so much for stopping by. And yeah, thanks again to OK Spaces for giving that membership there. Let me see. Luke says, I'd love a rear drive based Mazda 6 Sportback. Yeah, I think a lot of people would. I mean, I don't know, because I mean, Dodge is essentially delivering that right now, but with a Dodge badge, people aren't into it. But if Mazda gave it their styling and their take on it, maybe it would do better. I don't know. And Jeremy's asking thoughts on a Ford Maverick, looking at the hybrid version with 4,000-pound towing, have a 2018 Alfa Giulia on my trade. Oh, well, that's obviously apples and oranges there. I love Alphas, so I probably wouldn't make that swap myself, but if it fits your life better, obviously, go for it. I mean, Maverick is great. I did do the hybrid version. When was that? Last year. Yeah, I reviewed the hybrid all-wheel drive Maverick when that first came out. And so that's it's a good car. I mean, and Luke here has one as well, and he can probably fill you in on his thoughts on his. But I know he's very happy with his. I think the Maverick's great. If you need that amount of towing, I think it's going to be enough for that. And otherwise, you get fantastic fuel economy. I think Luke said he was getting over 40 mpg in his still. Especially these days, that's very nice to have. So I'd say great vehicle if you want it, But yeah, it'd be a hard thing to get rid of the Alpha. And he says, yeah, he loves it, but the gas and insurance prices nowadays have had it for over 2 years now. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they just like trying new things too. So if you've scratched the Alpha itch and you're ready to move on, I completely can understand that. And so yeah, Maverick though is great for sure. Now, obviously, if you want good fuel economy and you don't need the towing or the truck stuff, there's a lot of great hybrids out there that are going to, give you even better fuel efficiency than the Maverick there. But Maverick is a great car for sure, or truck, I guess I should say. And Michelle says, have you heard about the airbag theft going on with Hondas? Apparently, they're getting broken into and having the steering wheel airbag stolen, happening most common in Chicago, New York, New Jersey, and Philly areas. I haven't heard of that. Interesting. Is this newer Hondas, or are they still like kind of going after the 90s ones and stuff? Maybe those Takata airbag replacements are the prize there. I'm not sure. I hadn't heard about that, but that's unfortunate. I guess they're easy to pull. That's kind of surprising because I thought usually it's a little tricky to pull airbags off of some of these cars. Because I thought there was like, I mean, I guess if you're selling to the black market or whatever, it doesn't matter. But I thought there was like an indicator if you took an airbag and like divorced it from the wheel and it, like from the factory, like there's a way to tell it is not, like an original airbag or something. I don't know. But regardless, like, I guess no one's checking if they're buying, some sketchily rebuilt thing or something. But yeah, that's crazy. I hadn't heard about that. And Theodore, thanks for stopping by. He says, hope you and your family are doing well. We are. Hope you're doing well too. And he says, I saw the new Dodge Charger 4-door. Wow, that car is wide. Can't wait till the aftermarket hits. It should be a beast. Yeah, it'd be cool to see what the aftermarket does with Charger. I agree. And yeah, it is very wide. I've been on some narrow roads with the new Charger, and it's not my first choice for some of these narrow roads, but it gives it great interior space and a lot of presence for sure. And see, Vishal says it's newer Hondas. Really? They just have a market, I guess, so the jerks steal them and resell them, just like all the sport trim Honda wheels that also get stolen. I didn't know that was a thing either. Interesting. Huh. I don't know. Why are people going after those sport wheels? You'd think it'd be like the high wheels that, like, the limiteds or, elite versions or whatever that would end up getting stolen more so than the sports. Huh. That's strange. Honda, they've really had a harder time than a lot of companies with that stuff. I don't know why. That's crazy though. And Luke says, I love my Maverick hybrid. My only downside is the fuel economy decline during the winter. If you go over 70 on the highway, it dips pretty quick, but overall practical and a decent vehicle. I'm glad you're still enjoying it. And thanks for chiming in there for Jeremy. And I'm not paying 42 grand for Prelude. Says current project is replacing header gaskets on a friend's 14 Charger Daytona. Total pain in the butt, but she is giving me a 94 Bronco as payment. Wow, that sounds like a pretty good deal. That's awesome. I'm guessing the Bronco is not in pristine condition, but still, that's very nice of her. So hope it doesn't go too badly there. I'm surprised a vehicle like that would be like super challenging to do the header gaskets, because you'd think that kind of stuff, everything on that car would be swapped all the time, that they would have built it to be a little bit easier to work on. But well, good luck with that, and enjoy the 94 Bronco. I'm curious to hear your plans for it, or what you're going to end up doing with that. But Michelle says the sport wheels are a universal wheel bolt pattern, it seems. Gotcha. So they're easy to put on other cars, and there's a market for them. Wow. Okay. I appreciate this. I'm learning a lot tonight. That's crazy. I wonder why they do a universal bolt pattern on that one and not on the other wheels. Like what's like, why do they do that's, I have so many questions, so many follow-up questions. That's surprising. Anyway, Mr. Scooter Guy 101 says, hey, Matt, what are your thoughts on the CX-50 hybrid versus RAV4 hybrid? The Mazda seems to be the better choice. It depends on your personal preferences with that one, I think. You're going to get a slightly better fuel economy in the RAV4. I'd say RAV4 has a little bit more space too, and the space utilization is a little bit better than Mazda, where they really focus on styling at the expense of space a little bit. CX-50 is still a very practical vehicle, and funny enough, so my next door neighbor actually just picked one up a couple of weeks ago. They're big Mazda fans, and they actually have a personal connection to the Mazda dealer nearby, so they're able to to make sure their stuff's always serviced well and everything else. But they have a 650 hybrid. He really loves it. And then their other family member also showed up. I just saw it today with another CX50 hybrid, identical. So there's like two of them sitting in the driveway. So lots of 650 hybrids surrounding me here. But I think it's a nice option, especially if the RAV4 is either not plush enough, or if you just like the 650's materials. The fact that you can still have a controller knob, and you have that screen that's not a big touch screen like you get in the RAV4s now. There's a lot of nice things to it. I think I did review a 650 hybrid. If you haven't seen that already, check it out. But my complaint was that because it is a Toyota powertrain there in the 650 hybrid, it felt less refined than Mazda's powertrains usually do. And in particular, it almost felt like a little bit of like a vibration between the engine and the transmission, where it's like I don't know if it was maybe the motor mounts that weren't super stout. There was something about it that just felt like a little loose. It's kind of hard to explain. I probably explained it better in the moment in the video. So again, check that out. But I think I'll have to try it again, because I'm guessing there was just maybe something a little bit off with that press car or something. I have requested one here this year. There is one available. Mazda's sending me the regular CX50 Turbo here later this spring first, but I'm hoping to get into the hybrid as well this year, because I think the hybrid is the more important one of the two, especially with current gas prices. So I'm hoping to revisit CX50 hybrid again, but in the meantime, RAV4 hybrid is great too. If it were me, between the two of them, I do really appreciate the extra plushness. And if I don't need maximum space, I'd probably go CX50, because it also has a better stereo with the Bose stereo you get in those versus the JBL things. You get in the RAV4, usually kind of underwhelming. I need more time with the new RAV4 stereo to really make a good judgment on that one. But typically, Mazda has the better stereo, and I very much value a good stereo. So like more plushness, better stereo. I also think better styling too. CX50 is a really nice looking vehicle. So between those two, I would probably pick CX50 as well. But RAV4 is also really good. I mean, there's a good reason why they sell a ton of them. And especially if there's, a trim, for example, that you can't get in the CX50 hybrid, like, for example, the GR Sport version or the plug-in hybrids or some of these other things. RAV4 has a broader menu to choose from there. But if CX50, ticks all the boxes for you, it's also going to be a lot easier to get. That's the other huge component. I mean, even if you're going, I guess if you're going for maybe a leftover 25 RAV4 hybrid, you'll have an easier time. But if you're after a 26, they're a huge pain to get right now. And I don't know if Mr. 705, I don't think he's here tonight, but he has one currently on order. He's up in Canada, but I think he's said it's about another 4 to 6 weeks of a wait that he's still waiting for his. So it's just hard to get them versus a CX50 hybrid. You can probably waltz onto a Mazda lot tomorrow and pick one in whatever color you want and, be off in a few hours, So, I mean, that alone, and the fact you'll probably get some discounts, or I don't know about how much they'll be doing discounts now, because I'm sure everyone's running to the hybrids, but you'll probably end up with a better price, an easier time buying. So for all those reasons, yeah, I think CX50 is probably the better way to go right now, as much as I like RAV4. And Vijay says that this is happening also to Toyota with the thefts. The SE and XSE trim Toyotas are also having wheels getting stolen. Crazy. I wonder where, I guess, yeah, you said there's a market, but I guess it's just other parts of the world, because I'm like, who is desperately like trying to buy, OEM Toyota wheels? Because like, that's the thing also, it's like, it's OEM, like there is no shortage of cool wheel designs for people to buy that are probably cheaper too. So like, this is weird. I guess I just don't understand auto theft rings, but that just seems kind of, none of it makes sense to me. He also says, that's my understanding of this stuff. I see it often on subreddits of people walking out to their cars sitting on crates. That's crazy. That also seemed kind of perplexing to me. Why do thieves bother to put cars on blocks or bricks or crates? Like, if you're stealing stuff off a car, I mean, I guess like I commend them for being somewhat kind about it, so they don't like wreck the rest of your car when they dump it on the rotors or whatever. But like, why don't they just dump these things on the rotors? Like, do they keep a stash of like bricks to like very politely like leave your car perfectly on like the the jacking points on the underside there? Whenever they like, steal your wheel. I don't know. That part also, I guess I never stopped to think about it. But like, why do wheel thieves leave your car on blocks? That is, I mean, because you can have two jacks going at the same time, so you don't even, it's not even like it's a safety thing. So like, you could just, maybe it's too noisy. Maybe that's the idea, is it's quieter and you don't make a bunch of ruckus with a car if you drop it on the frame rails or something. Then that wakes up the neighborhood more. Maybe that's the idea there. I don't know. Again, I don't think about this stuff a whole lot, but it's fascinating to think about. And I'm not paying 43 grand for a Prelude. It says so many things to remove to get to the passenger side bolts. The Bronco has some electrical issues, but will be a fun undertaking. That's cool. And that's crazy about the passenger side on that. That's surprising. And Luke says, I'm really excited for the potential of the sedan comeback. I've said it before, but I hope at least a good chunk of sedans returning are sportbacks. I mean, that would be the smart way to do it for sure. So I think that would make sense. But, stuff like the Camry still is very successful too. So, I think companies will see, what works for them or what they decide to do. But yeah, I hope that a lot of them are sportbacks too. I think that's smart. And Jeremy says, thanks, Luke. I live in Southern California, so not worried about the weather. The practical and fuel economy and the price is looking nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, as long as you're looking for a truck or you're just into the truck, I think that's a fun way to do it. Maverick's great. And Michelle says they're the most targeted because they're very common cars. There's always a demand for those parts. The running joke for the wheels is curb all four so they don't get stolen. Interesting. Well, yeah, I guess that's, as long as you do it fast enough, then you don't have to worry about that. And then I guess that makes sense. Although I feel like a lot of these people would steal these wheels could easily fix them too, because it's not hard to fix curb rash, typically. So then, yeah, I guess that's one way to do it though, especially if they're really knackered, then you can, keep people away that way. And let me see. Jedi says, plus the RAV4 has the plug-in hybrids. Yeah, and that's the one nice thing, is it's a really good plug-in hybrid system now. It's 50 miles of range or whatever in the plug-in hybrids. Really solid. Should be able to handle all of your daily driving fully electrically as long as you plug it in every night. Really nice with those. And EPA LOL says insurance fraud. Maybe that's part of it for the wheel theft. Maybe. I'm sure there's some of that some people are stupid enough to try, and maybe they get away with it. I don't know. But I'm impressed. We're actually keeping up with comments really well tonight. I'm happy that we don't have people waiting hours for an answer here like we sometimes have. So either I guess I'm less ranty tonight, or we have a less high volume of questions as usual. But I'm going to take a drink here and see if any other questions here, comments here come in. So Brian, thanks for stopping by. And Luke says not to start a rant. Well, we've got time for it this week. But he says, but I have not seen any new Preludes yet in my trucking journeys. I see a lot of new Outbacks and just started seeing the 26 RAV in the last few weeks. Yeah, I've started to see Outbacks and RAVs a lot more here in the past couple of weeks too. But yeah, I mean, Prelude is going to be rare, even if they sell every one they ship. I think their goal is only to do 4,000 a year. And I don't know how much they even want to import beyond that, assuming it even sells that much, which I don't think it will. But yeah, definitely you're on the road a lot, Luke. So let us know if you do see one. I'm curious how long it's going to take before you do finally see one. Yeah, I haven't seen one yet either. And I'm assuming it's going to be like a Nissan Z situation where I'll maybe see one or two a year for the first few years. And then, start seeing them a little bit more. Like now I'd say, so far this year I've seen maybe 2 or 3 Cs, not a lot still, but more than I would typically by this point in the year. And let me see. And Michelle says insurance rates tend to be higher for these cars as a result of this stuff. I bet. And I kind of wonder if that's another perk. I mean, I know Hyundai and Kias have their thefts as well, but with that stuff, I think mostly being fixed, I wonder if those are the better way to go from an insurance standpoint right now. Because otherwise, what do you do? So if you don't want a Honda or a Toyota, or Hyundai or Kia. I mean, it depends on the segment, I guess. There's other options, but those are some of the top sellers. So it kind of puts you in a bind. I guess you got to go buy a GM product or Stellantis or something like that. It's surprising. And let me see. Neil says, thoughts on trading in a Chevy SS sedan for a 2027 Corvette base with the LS6. Already have a Hellcat Challenger, Scat Pack Charger, and a truck for a daily. I mean, if you've already got the Scat Pack Charger, then you've got the four-door thing covered. I guess it comes down to how much you enjoy the SS or don't enjoy it. I mean, yeah, because you kind of have some redundancies there. So I don't know. I mean, if your SS sedan is a manual, then that would make it a little bit more unique too. If it's an automatic, then I guess it's kind of pretty close to the Scat Pack Charger. If I was shuffling around your garage there, because the Hellcat Challenger and the Scat Pack Charger are, I mean, they're different for sure, but like both Mopar, both a fairly similar experience, same kind of interior and stuff. I would probably trade in the Scat Pack Charger for the Corvette, because then you got the big muscle car still with a Challenger. You got the Chevy SS, which is kind of the better handler compared to the Charger, and it's more dynamic, with that platform. And if you have with a manual, then that's another kind of exclusive thing. And also, I think SS sedans could appreciate. I think they are going to be sought after someday. Scat Pack Chargers are a dime a dozen. So I think from that angle, personally, I know you didn't ask this, so sorry that I'm like making up my own rules here, but I'd swap the Charger for the Corvette. I think the Corvette's gonna be great, and I think based on everything you have, with the other stuff there, I think Corvette would be a nice different thing and different experience. So I think going for a new Corvette's a great idea. As far as whether it's the SS or the Charger, obviously up to you. But I think SS sedan though is just a really special car. I loved the two that I had. And reviewed for a little while there. I didn't own one, but had them as press cars. And I feel like you would, I mean, at least I would probably miss owning an SS more than missing the Charger again, especially since you can hop in the Challenger anytime you want and have an even crazier experience, with that same Mopar kind of fun packaging, the way they've set things up in those. So that would be my take on it. But if you're really tied to the Charger there, going from SS sedan to Corvette obviously is gonna be a lot more fun. And yeah, it could still, I think, either way, yeah, going for the new Corvette's probably gonna be the way to go. It's gonna be a great motor. I still personally like the Z06 a lot better. That's the one that I would buy if I had the money. But if you're wanting to just stick to something, because I think Z06 is, I don't know how big the discounts are still, but they were pretty well discounted for a while. I don't know what they're going for in the used market right now, and I know long-term motor reliability might be a little iffy compared to the regular C8s, and those are valid points. But the Z06 is just so good. But yeah, I'm excited for the new Corvette. I think it's going to be great, and that motor is going to probably be really exciting too. So yeah, I think it's worthwhile. My thing with the C8s, the regular C8s, was that the red line was too low with the old motor, and the new motor doesn't seem like they're fixing that. Now it's going to be faster, and that's great. And the dual clutch is fast enough that you can still bang through the gears really quickly, and it still feels fast. But like in a sports car like that, I like having a high red line. I don't like having a boatload of torque. And because then you're just basically in the same kind of muscle mindset as the Challenger. So I like the higher revving nature personally. If you don't, though, I think that LS6 is going to be great. But if you want something a little more exotic, a little more sports car like, if you can, maybe try and see if you can go up to the Z06. But if not, Corvette's still going to be great. And it's still a mid-engine car, still very exotic feeling in that way. Great execution with the C8s. They're so well done, so fast. You're still going to be under 3 seconds 0 to 60 time even with a regular Corvette. It's going to be great. So hopefully that helps you a little bit there, Neon. Thanks for stopping by. And Michelle says he saw a blue Prelude on the road today. Wow, I'm surprised. He says it's so good looking. It's a shame it's priced the way it is. Yeah, I agree. I think styling looks great. That's cool. You saw one though. Okay, so someone is actually starting to see Preludes out on the road. That's great. I see Jedi says he hasn't seen any either. And Luke says my brother-in-law got a 2004 diesel wagon Volkswagen Jetta. Sadly, not a manual, and my sister says it's a dumb car. Oh man, well those are cool. No, I like that. I mean, because those things will get like 50 to 60 mpg while you're like beating the snot out of it. It's crazy. Such good cars. I mean, even without the manual, I mean, just a wagon with a diesel. It just good stuff. I think a lot of car reviewers love wagons and all that, so it fits into all those stereotypes. But that's a pretty cool car in my opinion. And let me see. Duncan Cycle says all-wheel drive 2027 BMW M2. That's going to be crazy. It will be. Although I don't know if you guys, how many of you follow Matt Farah, but I just saw a little clip of him driving the M2 CS on track, and he didn't seem like he loved it that much. It seemed like it was not great. So kind of surprisingly, I think it's gonna be great on the street probably, but sounds like it might not be as great on track. I don't know. I have to do more research. I didn't sit down and check out his whole video or anything. I just saw a little clip on Instagram or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think M2. I really love M2, but I think to me the magic of M2 is the playfulness, and it is that rear-wheel drive nature. And I also just like all-wheel drive, or I like rear-wheel drive better than all-wheel drive. So maybe I'm just biased, but like to me, M2 with all-wheel drive would be great for those who live in the winter places and they want to drive it all year round. Or if you're just looking for maximum acceleration, it's going to be great for that. But I think I'd actually rather have the rear-wheel drive version, honestly, and it's going to be way cheaper too, compared to the all-wheel drive. But Luke says people were very negative on your Elantra N video. I don't think putting the 2.5 motor in will push it over 40 grand, especially if it's an already existing engine, not like it's all new from the ground up. Right. I hope that's the case. I hope that, if they just use the 2.5 and tweak it a little bit, then that would keep it cheap. I think I don't really have an issue with that motor in there. I just worried about, again, not having a manual. And there were some commenters claiming, like one claimed, the factory that's building the manuals is already shut down, which I haven't fact checked. And then someone else said, no, it was reassured to me and their inside info or whatever that like it is going to have a manual still. I don't know, but that's the biggest thing. I mean, if it's an automatic, it's fine, whatever. It's still gonna be a great car, but the manual is really, to me, the way to go for those. Because it's just not something you can get with some of the others. And I love the manual. So that's my only worry is you lose the manual. And if that's the case, I'd rather not have the 2.5 and keep the manual than have the 2.5 with an automatic. Because I don't know if the dual clutch, I mean, I guess the dual clutch can handle it, because I think the 2.5, it had the dual clutch in like the Santa Cruz and stuff. So I guess they could do it, but I don't know. I think that that motor though with that transmission has had some issues too. So I don't know. I feel like I'd rather just do the manual. Honestly, we'll see what happens though. Hopefully, we find out here in the next year or two. And 42 grand for a Prelude says a friend of mine is a driver for FedEx and sent a picture of a new Prelude he spotted on his route. Still have yet to see one in person myself. Okay, so 2 spottings of Preludes now so far. Okay. Let me see. And also, speaking of wagons, Passat W8 wagon, that's a unicorn. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a kind of car that should go for big money someday. We'll see. And Duncan says, good point. He didn't like it on the track. Yeah. So I want to watch more of his video though, to find out more about that and what ended up happening there. It just looked like it was like understeering a bunch and just kind of being a mess. But BMW does that sometimes, where sometimes they make really brilliant stuff, and then other times it's like, has anyone tested this thing before they sell it to people? I know that they've done a ton of testing for BMW, so it's just weird. You put someone like Matt Farah in the car who knows what he's doing, then you just end up with this like horrible experience. It just seems kind of crazy, But Luke says Kirk Rifles made a good point with the Prelude. He says it should be an Acura RSX and keep the hybrid standard and offer the 2.0T from the TLX with a 6-speed manual or a 10-speed auto. Yeah, well, that's a little bit of wishful, unrealistic thinking, in my opinion. Especially, I mean, because the thing is, if you do 2.0T from TLX, that specific version doesn't made up to the 6-speed manual. So you'd have to, especially because they're so rigid with their packaging in Honda, like they would probably say, okay, you want 2.0T with a manual, then we just put the Type R motor in, which it sounds like they've shot down that idea. I agree. If it would have been branded as an Acura RSX, I mean, they couldn't have done that because they already were planning to do RSX for the SUV. But even if they, just called it Integra Coupe, I think people wouldn't even have cared the fact that it looked completely different from the Integra sedan. Like they would have just said, okay, cool. And, it has the Acura badge. And yeah, I think it would have done better. And if they were rigid on like, okay, we have to have this, have all this fancy, expensive stuff under the skin, then yeah, they should have just made it an Acura, and then would have probably done better. And then at least you would have had an Integra hybrid, because even if it was only for the coupe, it would have at least been something. Yeah, just I don't know. I would love to be a fly on the wall at Honda's product planning and their decision making process, because I want to understand, and I do not understand at all. Michelle says, I miss the days of Volkswagen Group doing crazy stuff. The V10 TDI Touareg, the V12 TDI Q7, the V10 S6 S8. I know. What a time, wasn't it? I mean, just like such fun, crazy stuff. And Volkswagen was, on top of the world too, and doing so well and everything. And yeah, because that's like the era they brought back the Veyron and all this other stuff. Just so many awesome things. From Volkswagen Group at that time. I mean, that's, Cayenne, massively popular, around then, and, just all kinds of great ideas coming out of Volkswagen. Michelle says it's fun seeing you getting worked up over Honda lately. I'm glad I haven't crossed over to annoying yet, at least for you. I'm sure for others it's maybe gotten there already. But yeah, it's just, those kind of things just drive me crazy, whether it's Honda or it's, Stellantis or whatever. Like, these things where it's just, yeah, I don't want to act like a know-it-all, but like, why? Like, I don't know. I mean, there are times, like, again, I've heard stories in the past of brands where they don't look at the competition, or they're out of the loop, or they're in these, echo chambers where everyone's just giving high fives and, not looking outside the boardroom windows, and just, it ends up giving them a skewed perception of reality and what people want. And, I don't know what the case is here with Honda, but I just want to, I haven't been on a Honda program since before COVID. So, I don't know if they're ever going to invite me on anything ever again, because it seems like now they're even getting a little weird about sending press cars, probably because of all this bashing, which I don't care. I'll happily, I'm not going to bite my tongue, but like, I really want to ask, like, why do you not have these things? Just like point blank, why do you not have them? Like, because I don't know if there's a good answer. Especially now they got all the electric stuff that they nixed. Like, you got a bunch of spare capacity at the factories. Like, we should hopefully see announcements of all these common sense cars here in the next 6 months. And if we don't, then they're not going to have any excuse at this point, because, if you could have blamed it on production capacity before, now you don't even have that. Anyway, so we're at the 2-hour mark, a little over the 2-hour mark. So we'll do the last few comments here, and then we'll wrap it up. But let me see. Luke says also they would have to update the crap black cloth back seat for an Acura version. Oh yeah, I mean, Caskin could throw in leather seat covers. You can get those on eBay for $100 or whatever. I mean, like, easy, yeah, for sure. And that's all it would take, honestly, for an Acura, because otherwise it sounds like it's a really nice interior, and that interior sells just fine in the Integra with an Acura badge on it, so maybe swap out the speakers and toss in the Integra, that better ELS studio and stereo in those, and call it a day. It's pretty simple in my mind, at least. And Theodore says, this is a non-car question. What is your favorite potato chip, or do you like Doritos? I love Doritos. Yeah. And I think actually my favorite Dorito is the new like late night taco one. It's a little heavy on the seasoning, but really good because I don't get tacos very often. So like having essentially taco seasoning on a Dorito. Sorry, I'm a little allergy still here. But like that's my favorite Dorito, I think. As far as other favorite potato chips, I'm a big potato chip fan, so there's a lot that I love. Pickle chips are often one of my favorites. The pickle flavored ones. There's a bunch of new ones they always have every year or two, like seasonal ones. There's like last year, I think it was a Cuban sandwich one that was super good. There's like I just picked up, I didn't actually have any yet, but they have like a bacon grilled cheese lays they came out with this year, not sponsored unfortunately. But there's some good ones there, but typically those are really good. There's also, it's not a really common thing, but our local grocery store does a buffalo chicken dip flavored potato chip, and it actually tastes like you're just having buffalo chicken dip without having to go to the trouble of making the whole dip. Not quite that good, but it's really close for a $3 bag of chips. So that's another one of my favorites. Yeah, trying to think of some others that are really good. But yeah, it's probably about it. As far as like other stuff, like if we're talking just brands in general, typically though I like Utz better. Like I think they do a better regular potato chip than like Lay's, which is a little too greasy sometimes and stuff. But yeah, I like potato chips so much. There's probably really no bad potato chip in my in my mind. Some of the super insanely hot ones I don't love, and yeah, but most of them I'm usually into. Not too picky with those. And 42 grand for a Prelude says there's a 2004 Passat W8 wagon with a 6-speed manual on Auto Trader, and I really hate being a peasant right now. Oh man, yeah, that sounds like a really cool combo. I wonder how much it's going for. Man, but that's the kind of car should be on Bring a Trailer, not on Auto Trader. That should be on, or even Cars and Bids, something like that, where you have a buyer that's going to pay a premium for something like that, because that kind of car could go for good money if it's in good shape, even if it's not in good shape, honestly. But Luke says, I feel crazy when I don't approve of a certain car or car brand's choices, so I feel reassured at your rants. Okay, well, I'm glad to help you feel not so alone there. Yeah, it's I think a lot of people are thinking the same thing, and that makes it even more confounding, because if I just had a bunch of stupid ideas and like I was just ranting about nonsense, like it'd be easier to just be like, oh, Matt's just a psycho, and let's Honda knows what they're doing, whatever. But like whenever all of us agree that Honda probably doesn't know what they're doing, it helps me to not feel crazy either. So I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship, Luke. I appreciate that. So we all are giving ourselves validation with our discussions here. And Michelle says the other blow for Honda is they don't offer the hybrids in lower trims. It's expensive to get into a Honda hybrid. Competitors all have cheaper trims for hybrids. I agree. I totally agree. And that's another thing where there's no reason why they can't do that. All the pieces are there. Once again, it's, I don't know. Yeah, maybe a couple of years ago it worked, but now especially like people are buying hybrids because they want to be frugal. That means they want a lower trim. I mean, the amount of like low spec Camrys I see is a lot. I would argue, I mean, maybe this is just the way it's always been for Camry, I don't know, but like I feel like for the last generation, I saw more XSEs and more higher trims of the Camry. For this generation, and maybe it's just a sign of the times, but I see a lot more lower grade Camrys, at least around here. Again, all things otherwise being equal, I'm not changing locations or anything like that. Like same area, and it's just like I see more people going for those lower ones, which I think is a great idea because the lower trims are so well equipped these days. There's no reason to go up to the higher trims as much as there used to be. So, I'm fully in support of it, but it's just kind of surprising. Like people are actually saying, no, I'm not going to go, and get talked into this high trim. I'm going to stick to the cheap ones. And I think it's a great way to go about it. All right. So yeah, Ryan's saying, hope everyone has a good week. And And Lancelot says, I'm not crazy. My mother had me tested. It's a good one. And So Michelle says, I see more LEs and SEs this generation. Okay, so it's not just me as well. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're seeing the same thing. He says XLE and XSE are out there, but not as much as the last generation. I agree. Cool. I'm glad we're seeing the same kind of stuff then. Helps me, again, not feel so crazy here. That's awesome. And yeah, he says, have a great week, everyone. I agree. Hope you all have a great week here. Stay tuned for my next live stream, which actually this is a good point. I will not be doing one on Wednesday. I will be too busy with everything else I got going on. Wednesday's gonna be a busy day for me. So I won't be doing one this Wednesday, but I'm gonna be doing one next Sunday for sure. So you guys will see me then. And yeah, I'm gonna be hoping to. I may actually do two different types of videos I haven't done in a long time here in the next week or so. We'll see how it all plays out. But anyway, stay tuned for that, and also maybe a few rants here this week. We'll see what news comes out. But thank you all so much for hanging out here on a Sunday evening. Hope you have a great week, and I'll see you guys here for the next live next Sunday. Take care.